Hello YouTube, welcome back to the channel. I was thinking about, before I hit record, I was thinking to myself that if I had a little bit more hashtag effort, a little bit more production values, I should come up with like a theme song when I want to give praise to the content gods. You know, maybe some Gregorian chants or something. I'm not sure. I've definitely got to come up with something because the content gods often provide. So anyway, from the title, you'll pretty much get the gist of it. I'm just going to talk about it for a couple of minutes. I'm also going to give credit where it's due. So right here on the screen, you can see On the Fly with Mike and Ty from Bench Clear Media. So I will credit them as being kind of the first to get this out there. Now I will say, and this is actually kind of a little side thing. So first, let me talk about the thing, and then I'll quickly say a couple of thoughts and something else on the side as well. So the kind of the lead story of it is that coming out of just after the national, there wasn't a big announcement at the national, but obviously a lot of people talk at the national, and word gets out on different things. But what Bench Clear here is talking about is that GTS has been informed that their distribution license with Tops will expire at the end, will not be renewed, or has expired at the end of the year. Whatever the case is, after the end of this year, GTS is basically out as a distributor as far as Tops is concerned, which of course also means Fanatics. And it's funny because Ty obviously did something, and this is kind of the point that I wanted to make. So again, credit to Ty for basically breaking this, and then Mike, of course, is joining him on this to give some thoughts and let him know credence. I will include a link to this in the description for you if you want to check it out on the Bench Clear Media YouTube channel. So credit to them for being first out of the blocks with it. I heard a very similar thing earlier this week as well. So I think, like I said, I think coming out of the national, there was a little bit of chatter that was coming of it. But to Ty's credit, and again, I'll give him credit where it's due, first being out of the block, but secondly, something very important, and this is something I kind of stick to as well. I heard about it, I believe, as early as Monday myself, but it's one of those things where I'm not going to talk about it if I don't at least have it from one other place. It was a source that I was very comfortable with and that has been very reliable for me. But at the same time, if you don't have a second source, it's a little bit irresponsible to go out there and throw it out there. So to Ty's credit, he was able to corroborate with a couple of sources, including someone at Tops, which I think is a great source, obviously. So, that confirmation, in addition to what I had heard previously, gives me then the confidence to kind of go forward with it. So we'll see, the deluge of videos. I'm recording this basically just overnight, just past the midnight hour. So by the time you guys wake up in the morning, most likely you'll be bombarded with a bunch of videos talking about this. But anyway, so credit to these guys for doing that and also corroborating, which is extremely, extremely important, especially when you're trying to cover something. I'm not exactly a news channel, but I'm also willing to do videos about stuff like this and talk about it. But I do feel it's the responsible thing to do to have multiple sources. Now, that said, what's the consequence? Because right off the top, I already said GTS is out as a Tops distributor by the end of the year. So that's really the story. There's not much more to it than that. But what's the downstream impact? What's the implication? The implication really is talking about kind of what we discussed as far as Fanatics is concerned and what their ongoing model is going to be going forward. Fanatics has obviously the distribution channels. They can distribute it themselves if that's what they want to do. The distributor model previously has been just like, I'm almost going to call it a service, but not really a service. Obviously, people don't appreciate the way a lot of the distribution is done. But there is something to be said for having the ability to just ship a bunch of product to one place and then have them figure out how to distribute it to dealers or to breakers or to whoever. And it takes one step out of the process. But Fanatics has the logistics, in theory, to be able to handle that themselves. That doesn't necessarily mean they're going to want to handle it themselves. And one point that Ty and Mike make here that I think is valid is that we're talking about GTS specifically. That isn't all distributors. So it isn't to say that they're completely getting out of dealing with any distributors. So it could just very well mean that there's a narrowing of the distributors. Maybe they just didn't like GTS's way of doing business. So they're going to focus their attention more on some of the other distributors while at the same time potentially also having some of their own distribution channels. I could see a hybrid model, to be honest with you. I could see a combination of Fanatics using some of its distribution for certain products and then maybe for some other more common products. The one that has always stuck out to me is something like Topps Flagship. Something like Topps Flagship, they may not want to ship out thousands and tens of thousands of boxes or cases or whatever the case may be. It might be less of a pain to just send it off to one distribution channel and then let them figure out how to distribute it with certain set conditions. So it could also be a matter of really clamping down on the conditions and the agreements, and maybe GTS kind of falls outside of that, and then as a result they're out. We'll see. I don't think that's the end of GTS in any way, but of course it is a big deal that they lose a very large client who obviously is going to gain in prominence as Fanatics continues to roll forward. There were a couple of other items in conversation that came up in that discussion earlier this week. That other shoe hasn't dropped yet. So it's one of those things where, again, I'd have to corroborate it to be comfortable discussing that further. But this is one of the shoes that definitely was that we discussed and that has dropped now as a result of this. And it makes sense. It was one of those things. It wasn't a matter of if, it was a matter of when, and it was a matter of what it was going to look like. And it appears that in this case, it was getting GTS out of it. What that means for the other distributors is going to be a very interesting question going forward, in addition to what that model will look like. Again, I believe it's going to be a hybrid model, in my opinion, something to the effect that there's going to be some preferred distributors, whoever that ends up being by the end of it, and in addition to Fanatics themselves also having their own logistics and using it for certain product. I could see them using that for the higher end product because they really want to control it. And at the same time, setting much stricter conditions on the distribution channels that they end up using, because then that gives them a lot more control and potentially allows them to pocket more of the money. The truth is, if they go to a full distribution model, then they get to control it. The suggested retail price suddenly becomes a lot more relevant because they can basically sell it directly to consumer and then cut out the middleman. Cut out one middleman, you get to pocket more of the proceeds and still be able to offer it, quote unquote, for a better price for the consumer. So it's kind of having your cake and eating it too by controlling the full distribution. Like I said, there are some inconveniences about some of those larger, more mass-produced products. But for the higher end stuff, I could totally see them completely taking it in house. That would be the hybrid model that I would think of. But that isn't to say that's what they're going to end up doing. But it's a step forward in terms of seeing what they're going to do and taking a step forward and controlling more of their own distribution channels. So anyway, GTS is out as far as that's concerned for tops by the end of the year. That's kind of the lead story of this. I'm curious what your thoughts are. What does this mean going forward as far as distribution? Do you think that all the distributors are out, or do you kind of think like I do that this is potentially a step towards a hybrid model where maybe they are a little bit more controlling in the terms that they give to distributors, but that certain favored distributors will still get product, and that's how they'll distribute it going forward, combined with Fanatics doing some of its own direct to consumer? Any thoughts or comments you have in there, I'm happy to check out in the comment section. Like if you like the video, subscribe to the channel. We got more videos coming up on the channel, and probably we'll end up talking about this a little bit as well on the live stream Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. That's it for now. Thanks very much. We'll catch you in the next one.